Everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, your weekly dose of insider DevOps trends, AWS news, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A that you can't find anywhere else. It's May 29th, 2024. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator that works predominantly with funded startups and enterprises and helps teams who are overwhelmed with AWS. And we do this leveraging our over 200 Terraform modules that have been battle tested and downloaded over 100 million times. So no matter where you find yourself on this journey, we're here to help your startup launch better products faster. If you're curious about what we can do, just go to cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet and book a session with me directly. All right, how can you maximize today's session? So first off, our format is informal. You can ask as many questions as you'd like. If you're curious about any of our open source tools or modules, go for that. And for those on the recording, we host these calls live. You can just go to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours to get a recording. We're going to be posting a recording of today's session to our YouTube channel. So if there's something you found interesting and want to share it with your team, that's a great way. Just go to youtube.com/cloudposse to find the recording. So with that said, here are this week's announcements. Quite a lot of interesting things going on. So first one, Teleport. We've been supporting Teleport for a really long time. It's a phenomenal remote access product. Has been a little complicated to set up and stuff, but they've also had a pretty good security track record. It was brought to my attention, this release 13.4.26 had a slew of security vulnerabilities. So I'm really curious what the backstory is here, how so many came up at the same time. I wonder if they had gone through like an external pen test, or one of their customers maybe had done something. So it is highly advised to upgrade your installation of Teleport if you're currently operating it. All of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, were considered high severity vulnerabilities. Now, I do have one curious thing somebody could explain to me. What is the process behind something becoming a CVE versus something not being a CVE? And especially when that entity, like Gravitational, just back in February, had a press release about being their own CVE numbering authority. So I was curious, like, why are these not CVEs and all of that? Anyone know? All right. Yeah, so the Teleport or Gravitational CVE. What was it? Yeah, this was
I'm
the
actually.
Teleport
Yeah.
issuing CVEs was the announcement back in February, which I think we talked about maybe on office hours. So I was just kind of like, wait, you just announced that you are now like handling all your own CVEs, and then you have this release which has these high severity issues that are resolved, and there's no CVE.
Yeah, I mean, like the CVE.org is or whatever is run by NIST, I believe, and the whole idea is just that you you opt in to publish, or someone publishes on your behalf if they discover something that has. I think when you publish uh, the request for a CVE, or whatever you want to call it, for a CVE number, it asks you like the scope and the breadth and um, the possible number of people affected by it and all those things. So I wonder if there's something like in these vulnerabilities that don't reach the level of like being affecting enough people, I guess, is what I was trying to say. My brain is not working today, so I'm not speaking very clearly. Sorry, but I just wonder if they don't have enough enough potential victims of the CVE to qualify or something like that.
Got it. If they're a little bit far-fetched. Yeah, because here it just says we'll issue for critical and high severity. And well, those were those were specifically listed as high. So maybe it's forthcoming. Though usually CVEs are announced at around the same time, right?
Yeah, although did the are you sure that they aren't CVEs?
Well, okay. I had checked and let's see here. So like here you can search or by keyword on this. And where's it was easier just to search and then click the button. Where'd it go?
It's next to try for free, I think. You have the little magnifying glass. Oh, there you go.
Because if I just did teleport here, find, and then I click here. Yeah, so it has teleport findings.
But those are all old. 2022 is the
Exactly.
last
These
one.
are all old, and that's what I saw. And what I was just in my head looking at, is this a different product than gravitational teleport? But no, it's gravitational teleport. So
Well, it's saying here that the legacy CVE, there's a new website and new format. So I just wonder if you're not seeing like the entire CVE database here.
that could be. Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone knows more about this, curious, just thought it was kind of interesting, only because they had also announced that they were taking a more active role in issuing CVEs, and then these things came out and weren't that way. All right. Next one is a very common problem when you're modernizing your CICD strategy is, well, what about that database that we were always just snapshotting from production and using in development? Not really a great idea. I mean, even if you don't have sensitive, like really sensitive data, like credit card numbers and PHI, there's still other things like email addresses. And I've definitely seen it happen where a developer will accidentally send out an email blast maybe to email addresses in that database. So how do you anonymize that data? Well, I guess there are a couple of approaches, right? One is you have fixtures and it's just a small subset of your data and you randomly generate that in some way, but it's never really as good as having that snapshot from production. So anonymization is required. And products have spun up around this. A popular one nowadays is called tonic.ai. It makes it pretty easy. It has lots of output formats as well. You can even create like a Docker image containing a anonymized snapshot of a subset or the full set of your data. Well, Neosync is a new project that's come out. It's also based on open source with a commercial interest, of course, here. So it's a Y Combinator-backed company. They support MySQL and Postgres, and looks like they're trying to solve this problem. So curious if anyone's tried it, seen it, or have other similar open source recommendations. All right. Let's see. Next announcement.
For what it's worth, there's a really good JavaScript library for generating a bunch of fake data. If you're not using that approach, but you want to do it like you want to generate random data like names and email addresses and all that kind of stuff called Faker. I think it's like faker.dev or something like that. That actually does a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the safest way to go altogether. Someone, I forget where, I think it was in the Hacker News post where I originally saw this. One of the antagonists for the product was like, don't even bother doing this. It only takes like 5 points of data or 10 points of data to uniquely identify everyone. So even if you just change a name here or something there, well, you still know their IP address, maybe you still know their browser version and all these other things to uniquely identify them, kind of like the browser fingerprinting type of stuff. I don't really subscribe to this concern, but there is that. If you don't properly handle all dimensionality of the data, maybe somebody is still uniquely identifiable. All right, next one. So I thought this was interesting also because Venkat was recently asking about how to speed up EKS node boot times. If you're doing a lot of auto scaling and, well, you're running a lot of pods on those instances, and those pods are downloading containers, and the containers are like, a gig or two, it can actually be a pretty slow startup time for your cluster. Now, this isn't really that. This is slightly different, but it did catch my attention when I saw the article. I thought it was interesting because it lays out all the number of techniques that you can do if you have the time and resources to optimize for it, to speed up your EC2 boot times. And they showed how they can get their EC2 boot times down into seconds, and I forget where it was, but it was pretty remarkable.
Up above
5 seconds.
right
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
From 40 seconds to 5 seconds, leveraging a bunch of techniques. Probably most notably pre-launching your instances, snapshot, or and then suspending them, so you can bring them up as needed, and then that's much faster. So that would be pretty cool if with Kubernetes, you could basically bring your nodes up, let them kind of, download all the images, and then just shut them down so that they're ready when you need them. And then you get instantaneous scaling. But as if Kubernetes wasn't complicated enough. All right. Next announcement.
You get charged for the EBS time, right? For all those suspended instances.
There is something like that. I think so. Yeah. Because the data is still reserved, right? You can't, you can't release it to the cloud, but it's probably nominal. I mean, storage is one of the cheaper things. Not cheap, but
yeah, depending on how many instances you have.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have thousands of whatever, like 100 gig instances, I mean, you're getting into pretty serious storage if you're keeping a bunch of them in reserve like that. So I don't know.
To their credit, though, before this, they were actually keeping that pool live and online, and that's clearly more expensive.
Yeah, of course.
So I thought this was an interesting article, and let's face it, I think it's true. There's been a lot of innovation in this area. Amazon had the first mover advantage and basically invented the category of object storage as a service. And S3 has been around since I started using cloud at AWS. So we're like talking, was it 2005 or something? So it's showing its signs of wear and tear. And one of those is the functionality that it doesn't support. So no multi-region buckets by design. You can set up replication, but they aren't, there's no like just click, make this bucket multi-region. There's no option like that. The ability to append to objects, as they mentioned, and then also preconditions, like only update this file if it hasn't changed since this date. So you can do, concurrent writes to a bucket safely without overriding other data or throwing an exception if such an event occurred. Curious, anyone else have other ideas on this? It's mentioned that Google Cloud Storage, even Minio, Cloudflare have a lot of this functionality, but not S3. All right. Next,
just March 14th, 2006, is when S3
Oh,
launched, just to set the
2006.
yeah.
Okay. Then let's see here. Yeah, so here was one. We've talked about the impact of root servers before. You know, the way the internet works is all based on trust. And at the root of that trust, so to say, is how DNS works, since that's how we all access sites predominantly. Now, there's a set of, I guess, 12 or 13 root servers. And well, each one of those is itself, I believe, a cluster behind it. But one of those lost connection for a solid 4 days. And apparently there hasn't been a write-up, at least as of when I saw this article on the 23rd. So anyone have an update on this? Has Cogent come out and explained what happened? Because the concern here is, wait, was this server hacked maybe? And that's why? Or was there some other critical failure? Or, you know, concerns be abound.
Yeah, two things are concerning about that. One, that it happened, and two, that it happened for 4 days.
That's a long time.
Yeah, like they clearly don't have the correct monitoring in place.
Yeah.
To know that that happened sooner.
Well, okay, so that's one theory, maybe that they didn't have the monitoring in place, or the other is that they weren't prepared enough for such a whatever catastrophic loss or downtime or situation that they had. Or that's just the amount of time it took for them to process the Bitcoin for the ransomware attack that happened. I'm just making that up.
No. Every article I've seen basically says that there's no there hasn't been an update to as to why.
Okay. And all right, good news here. What was
and just I was just gonna say, just to be clear, the thing that they actually found in that thing was that which is even scarier, it wasn't processing any updates to .gov TLDs for like 3 days before they realized it or something.
Right. Yeah. So it's not that it was down per se, it was that it was out of sync. I forgot to emphasize that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gov is also a good target for cybercrime and nation state act.
And the other thing I read about this whole thing is that, you know, so for those that aren't necessarily in the loop on how this all works, is like all these internet backbone providers have peering agreements with other internet backbone providers. That's how they exchange data. So like the data gets off of Cogent's network by traversing a peering connection that they have with AT&T or with Verizon, with Level 3, or like whoever owns all the other backbones. And currently Cogent's actually in a big dispute with like NTT Data, which is like the biggest provider in Asia. And I think they're in a dispute with Tata and Hurricane Electric and someone else. So some of them are saying that they're de-peering, like a lot of those providers have de-peered Cogent because so all these providers rely on basically like roughly equal send and receive traffic between the two of them. That's all, like the idea. But when one gets way out of whack, they tend to either try to charge that provider or come up with some other like peering arrangement to take their traffic. And apparently Cogent is in balance with a whole bunch of different providers out there, and they're looking to those providers are looking to try to like de-peer them. So I don't know if that has something to do with like how this happened, but it sounds like the Cogent in general is just in a little bit of chaos right now. So
Side story. Yeah.
yeah.
Wonder if it comes together with that. All right. Switching topics, we just published better instructions on how to use OpenTofu with Atmos. If you're not already familiar with Atmos, Atmos is our tool at Cloud Posse that we use in all of our engagements for the last 4 years or so to manage advanced Terraform architectures. Atmos solves the configuration problem. When you start designing your Terraform in a highly reusable manner, you don't have a Terraform problem anymore. You have a configuration problem. And we solve that with Atmos and create all the workflows around it. So Atmos works, of course, with BSL license HashiCorp Tofu, HashiCorp Terraform, as well as MPL licensed fork of that, which is OpenTofu. It's as easy as editing your atmos.yaml and specifying the configuration settings here that I've highlighted, basically components, Terraform, and the command that you want to run. Also, what's cool is that all of this is extendable via stack configurations. So if you wanted to, in your stack configs, override just one stack or a couple stacks to use different versions of Tofu, you can do that. And if you're using Spacelift together with this, make sure you check out the instructions for how to utilize Spacelift together with it. And I thought we had a link in here for the Spacelift instructions, but I guess it's not linking here for some reason. Also, it's nice to point out, we have this feature called aliases in Atmos. You can alias anything, any subcommand of Atmos to be whatever you want. Many like very short commands, especially if you're typing a lot on the command line. We couldn't decide on what the canonical short abbreviation was that would make everyone happy and still be clear and legible. So we added support for you to define your own. And here's an example of that. So then you can alias tofu to Terraform, and now you can run Atmos tofu plan EKS, and you'll get all the same benefits. Next announcement is actually a perfect follow-up, maybe, to what we were just talking about, which is the Internet of Trust, right? The Internet is also, as a whole, kind of, showing some of its age. It came from a time when trust was taken for granted, and how, universities communicated was with trust. It was a simpler world back then. Now, BGP is more easily exploited as the protocol is better understood. And this is the underpinning of the entire internet. How all these major peering points work is ultimately through BGP. And the FTC is looking to possibly regulate this, because the security of the whole internet, the security of our infrastructure is all based on this fundamental trust. If you control the BGP routes, you can route that traffic anywhere you want, for some subset of the traffic at least. Matt?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so BGP is basically how, all those networks that we were just talking about that peer to one another, they use BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol, to essentially tell the other neighbors that are connected to them by physical cables. All these networks come together in buildings all around the world, and they literally plug in an Ethernet cable between the two of them. And that's how they, or multiple aggregated Ethernet cables to build up up to 100 gig Ethernet peerings, and then they run the routers on either side, run BGP to tell each other the routes that they have connected, like the IP address prefixes that they're advertising to their peers. So if you're a customer of AT&T and you have an actual AT&T connection in your business, and you have public IP addresses, you advertise them to AT&T. AT&T eventually aggregates up all of their routes, and then they advertise them to their partners to say, we have a direct connection for these routes, and we have a transited connection for these other routes. And basically the protocol figures out the least cost path route to get from network A to network C, when you're going to do this. And the protocol by default allows you to advertise any route you want, pretty much, like out there. And now the network standards are basically that you put access control lists on your edge routers to only allow updates for certain prefixes and things like that to come from certain peers. But it's really hard to like regulate that. So like as an example, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, 12 years ago, I remember Pakistan ISP was trying to prevent all users in Pakistan from being able to browse YouTube. So they basically found all the routes for YouTube, and they routed them to a Pakistani like set of servers that basically said you're not allowed to watch YouTube. But then they accidentally advertised all of those routes to their peers, and people who were transiting the Pakistani ISP to get to Google then like actually got blocked. And they set it with like the highest priority on the routing table. So unless you were basically directly peered with Google, this made it into their global routing table for like a lot of people. And they had to basically, like, all of the peers of the Pakistani ISP basically had to block, like disconnect them until they fixed that, so that this problem didn't happen. So not having some basic security controls in place for these things, and not having it built into the protocol, or a protocol that better better ties into some sort of registry about who has the canonical control over certain IP address blocks, is actually pretty dangerous. And it's been a problem for quite a long time. I just don't know how easy it would be for the FCC to actually fix this, though, because every router, they basically need a new RFC for a new version of BGP, and every routing provider would need to adopt and support that and implement it. And then at some point, everyone on the internet would need to opt into using that new version of the protocol for this to take place. So it's definitely not an easy process.
I think they're taking more of a legislative approach, like you shall do this or this.
Yeah. But the FCC has no jurisdiction over anyone outside of the United States, basically. Exactly. So who cares? If Pakistan wants to do that again with YouTube, they can. Now, the only thing that will happen is the peers of like the Pakistan state ISP will get fed up with them doing nonsense like this, and they'll just de-peer them. And then basically that ends up with them being on an island together with coaches. and then they can all, like, the traffic will never leave their network if every other peer just says we're not going to accept routes from your traffic. I'm sorry, we're not going to accept routes from your network. That network is on an island and it can't reach the rest of the internet. So that's it's not an easy problem to solve by any means.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Matt, for the further explanation on that. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm using the GitHub CLI all the time. Now, the GitHub CLI is optimizing different things. It is really great for actually scripting a bunch of stuff if you ever need to do that, and not looking up all the obtuse GitHub GraphQL queries and APIs. Well, here's a spin off of that, a full-on text-based UI around the GitHub CLI. I feel like TUIs, text-based UIs, are having a renaissance right now, maybe inspired a little bit by Charm Bracelet. But there's so many of these things coming out now that are providing better console-based access. And it's just so interesting how things are cyclical, right? Like, first it's, started on the console, moved into graphical, everything had to be graphical. Now there's this kind of push to go back into the command line, a time when things were simpler.
You know that this in particular is actually written with Charm Bracelet, like under the hood.
Go figure.
Click on the Go mod. You can actually see it in there.
Yeah. Yep. There it is. Bubble tea, glamour, lip gloss. Oh, they're using it all. So yeah. Charm Bracelet, they do some really awesome open source around console-based UIs.
One quick feature that I came across on GH Dash is you can actually do custom filters in those menus. And so I was able to filter down to my org's PRs. I think if like create a config file, if I remember correctly.
Awesome. So you've been already using it now for some time.
I was using it, but I ran into an issue. So I used it for about a day, got it customized. And the issue I had was I have a bunch of Renovate bot PRs and I wanted to quickly go through them very fast. And I thought this tool would be great. And to a certain degree it was, but the problem is I don't have all the repos cloned locally. And that's where the tool kept throwing an error. So I opened up a GitHub issue for it. And I think I was selected to fix it and I have not fixed it yet. So that's kind of where I'm at. My Golang's a little weak. So I've got to contribute my PR and fix my own bug. But that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But it's a great tool. So definitely, if you haven't used it before and you like the CLI and you spend a lot of time in GitHub, the Git diff is perfect. Like it was all there, if I remember correctly. So yeah, definitely worth checking out.
That's one of those like anyone who wants to volunteer step forward and you stood still and everyone else took a step back.
Awesome. All right. So more juicy announcements. This one was on UniSuper, which is apparently some Australian retirement savings fund with over $115 billion under management. And they had a slight mistake. In one of their scripts, they provisioned 2 subscriptions, one for production and one for non-production. And both of them had not selected the right option. So they expired after 1 year, forcibly so. This is nothing that you could have like, well, you should have just set your lifecycle rule in Terraform to prevent destruction. No, you can't do that with this. This was at the cloud level. Pretty awesome that you can do that, but with great power comes great responsibility. And at a certain monthly spend or commitment, you would think there should be some guardrails in place. Hey, you're spending $5 million a month with us or $10 million a month with us. God knows what they're spending. And then, boom, it just gets destroyed. So it took them, gosh, I don't remember how many days. It took, it was a Herculean effort. They were able to bring things back up. And Google has said they are taking steps to help ensure that these things don't happen again. But to be clear, this was not a Google problem. This was a PEBCAC problem that was a misconfiguration.
So just to clarify, this was when they created their Google subscription.
Yes.
You had set an expiration date, correct?
Yes. I'm not sure the technical details, if it's just a feature flag or like a specific date.
Yeah, the other articles that I came across were pretty much blaming Google, so it's great to hear it was not on their end. But
yeah,
also,
Yeah.
I wonder, I haven't been using Google Cloud for that long. It's only been a few years since I've touched it, so I wonder when they created their account and how things were back then.
Yeah, the thing I read said that there was a default expiration date or something if you didn't pass in a value, and which was 1 year out from the time you created the account or something like that, and they just didn't set it. And they didn't realize that, and it defaulted to like a year or something from the time they created it, and that's how it got deleted.
So this is kind of where they have some skin in the game here, Google. They had a very poor value that could bite anyone in the butt. So
yeah, that would be like, warning, you do realize your account will be deleted in 1 year. You know, that should be.
That's usually the thing you don't optimize for, right? You optimize for the cloud just being this ATM machine that continuously pumps out money for you.
Yeah. Although this feature would be awesome on AWS for testing.
I know,
Like,
right?
I'm gonna spin up an entire new organization, test all my stuff, and expire it in 3 days, and then it will just go away. That would be great.
That would be amazing. And this is, I mean, going back to that earlier conversation about S3 showing its age. I mean, this is really where AWS is showing its age. The whole construct around accounts and organizations was good for when it came out, but is primitive now by comparison to how GCP and Azure handle it with subscriptions. Accounts are just such a heavy-handed thing. And you need this whole other product, Control Tower, to manage it. And Control Tower itself is a Rube Goldberg apparatus, I'm sure, behind the scenes on how all that works. And yeah. But it's pumping out money, as it should, for them. All right.
Yeah. So there's the how long. It took 11 days to get
days.
everything back up and running. Yeah. That's a long time when you can't not to be able to do business.
Yeah. Let's see. Next announcement is public service announcement. Heroku is actually not dead. I thought they were on their death knell. Joking, but they have modernized how they do their databases now. They conceded, yes, we run on Amazon. We might as well use Amazon services. So they have moved their Postgres Essentials plans now onto Amazon's Aurora, which is their RDS clusters, and seeing significant performance boosts on that. And as part of that, they've reduced some of those row limits. I think it used to be like a 10,000 row limit or something on the database, at least for the essential plans. But hey, makes sense.
Doesn't Salesforce own Heroku now?
They do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that, you know, there was a slew of unfortunate security vulnerabilities and announcements that happened. Was it a year or two ago? I forget. Time goes so fast. Basically, every secret stored as an environment variable in Heroku was compromised. And those are the kinds of things you kind of, I don't want to say expect, but you know, this is Heroku kind of invented what we consider a, you know, they were the first true PaaS that showed how easy deploying apps could be. And they were thought leaders in that respect. But then they exited, right? They sold to Salesforce. I'm sure nobody on the core team is there anymore. This is technology that's, you know, 10, 15, whatever years old. It's got to have a lot of complexity rashes and problems behind the scenes. So
yeah. And in the meantime, the Vercells and Netlifys of the world have been able to look at what they did and build better products and better versions of those products for the modern infrastructure.
Yeah. So actually, that's a perfect transition. Not linearly here, but I thought this was interesting. Caught my eye just before office hours. It was trending on Hacker News, but I empathize with it, identify with it. The 3 laws of software complexity. Maybe why we're all grumpy. But the truth is, a well-designed system will degrade into a badly one over time, inevitably. And this is the first law of software complexity, at least quoting Mahesh here. I'm not sure if this has been stated elsewhere, but this is my first seeing of this one right up. And this is what happens with, platform like Heroku, right? Starts off much easier as the requirements and the problem space is much smaller and a smaller user demographic with it. But as the number of people using that system increases, the number of requirements increase, open source never sleeps, technology never sleeps. So the number of things you want to be able to do and can do increases, and you have this abstraction that's trying to simplify all of that. And it's hard to make everything, future-proof indefinitely. So that I kind of bled into the second law here is then, as that complexity increases, you're going to start leaking more and more of the underlying technologies into your abstraction. So your abstraction isn't as clean and elegant as it started off with. And yeah, we like to think there's an upper limit, I think, on some of these things. But when it comes to complexity, there is no upper limit. We are a creative species. We always find ways to innovate. But those innovations are not always appreciated when newcomers to the problem space enter. And it really takes having gone through it to appreciate it all. So how do you fix all of this? And the reality is, sadly, as he concludes at the end, you don't. For the most part, you don't. You start fresh, armed with all the knowledge of what had happened, and using the new advances that have happened in your space to overcome it. I also, though, caution a lot of people, newcomers into a company or a business, especially into enterprises. It's easy at first glance. This is horrible. You did all the wrong decisions, and this is so backwards, and you have to do this. But before you seek to judge all that, seek to understand all the things that you had to solve for along the way. And sometimes you kind of arrive at a lot of the same conclusions, maybe just with a simpler tool set or some slightly different tools. All right, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to add really quickly that I feel like we go through this process a lot with customers and trying to explain why orchestration tools like Atmos or TerraGrunt or the other custom wrapper scripts or whatever that are out there, why it's necessary. And like the number of times that I've talked to customers recently who are just like, well, why do we need this? Let's just use plain Terraform. And then you're like, oh, not this stupid argument again. And then like you go through all the things. Well, like, how are you going to keep your configuration dry? How are you going to deploy to multiple environments? How are you going to do X, Y, and Z? And then finally they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. And it's like, I'm not sure, like the tools that where I think this comes up a lot in any kind of tool or framework or whatever, where the hello world example is like 10 lines, but the production example is 10,000 lines. It's really hard for people to grasp like the difference between the two. And I feel like that gives you this false sense of like how easy it is to use something or to do something when it really isn't, when you boil it all down. So I wish there were some way to express that concept and let someone know that they're like falling into that trap again. Like there needs to be some term to be like, yeah, you're not taking advantage. You're not taking into consideration all the real complexity that there is behind this when you say that statement. Like, with all due respect, kind of thing.
I know, and it's so interesting because, well, a common theme of today's office hours is history repeats itself, and I think back to PHP especially. There was a lot. It took a long time for people to adopt mature, like modern frameworks in PHP, like Symfony, and later on, I'm drawing a blank now, but these things. And
Laravel or whatever.
Yeah,
Is that
Laravel,
the-
exactly. That being another popular one, and then some. So nowadays, I don't think you approach any mature language seriously without thinking that you're going to use a framework, right? And all the way down to your JavaScript, right? I mean, to your CSS, I meant to say. And these same developers are the same ones pushing back on a framework for Terraform. And I don't understand why we're making the same mistakes again, because Terraform, as you increase your sophistication, your requirements become more complex, it is inevitable you need some level of abstraction on top of that. Many choose shell scripts, many choose make files, some choose TerraGrunt, some choose Atmos, Terramate, and there's a long list of these things, but something.
I think the reason is it just kind of dawned on me, like, or one of the main reasons is no one that builds any of these things, ourselves included, actually market it as the framework for Terraform. Like we actually talk about it as a tool and an orchestrator and whatever. Where like if you go to Next.js says like the modern framework for JavaScript or whatever it is, right?
There is one company that does TerraSpace intelligently, but I didn't look at it the same way. What? Terra. But no, what is it? I thought it was TerraSpace. Did they give up their
.cloud?
Yeah. So is a Terraform framework. But I always interpreted that slightly differently because TerraSpace is written in Ruby with a Rails-like framework. So that was always my connection to it because they were trying to piggyback on the Rails kind of notion and TerraSpace very much does appeal to companies that do a lot of Rails development, more so maybe than others. But now I see it differently. Now I see it as a good positioning that they've done. All right. Let's see. We are, let's see, I did want to ask, so Venkat, you were on here. I wanted to see what we could talk about on that. And we don't have Matt Gowie, right?
You skipped the Param Store and Grafana ones, right? Okay, just making sure you realized you did
those.
that.
Yeah. Just wanted to let's just jump quickly over to talking points. And Venkat, you had asked about really slow ECR pool times. I don't know if you heard the lead-in that I had about how the company had optimized like EC2 boot times by 8x, and I'm not saying that's applicable to what you're doing.
Oh yeah, I saw the link that you shared. I joined only about 19 minutes ago, so I'm a little late to this meeting. But with regards to the ECR pull times, we did a node pool cutover just the other day for that same account, and it was actually fast. I didn't just sit there seeing a bunch of failures. So whatever the scaling issue was, it seemed to have just kind of disappeared. So what we would do is we deploy a new node pool, and all the workloads being stateless and with disruption budgets in place, we cut over a pod at a time. And so we have like the script that does a bunch of cordon and drains across all the nodes. And for some reason, it would just take forever, like past few times, except for yesterday, literally. And it went by pretty fast. So I looked at the times, the pull times were pretty reasonable. And prior to that, when they originally posted that question, it was taking as long as 8 minutes. And I did a test where I rotated node pool again, and I only migrated a pod at a time. And I saw under normal load or like a good load, or I guess good load on ECR, would take 15 seconds. So it would shoot up as high as 8 minutes. And I never got around to opening the ticket because it was some cross account thing. And we're running some issues on the support package. I thought they already had it, but yeah, long story short, I think it was a microservice on AWS's end, but I still need to get confirmation on that. But the fact that it didn't happen yesterday is a good thing. So maybe they've already scaled it up based off our usage pattern of doing a 400 pod cutover once every 2 weeks. But yeah, so I'm assuming they've done some multi-tenant tenancy on their end on the back end for ECR. And it's probably, assuming that you folks haven't felt slow ECR pull times midday or even at night, then it's probably just isolated to that one AWS account.
Yeah. I mean, it is often a point of contention in CI pipelines, especially using GitHub Actions on Arc, Actions Runner Controller, and Spot instances. And then you have a lot of fresh instances that come up that don't have layer caches. And I don't think we have a solid answer for that. And I don't think there is really an answer. There's no difference between using S3 for caching and ECR, right? Or if you used EFS, right? It's more or less all the same. So something needs to optimize it.
Yeah, if you're the one thing that you can do, I've had to do this in a previous life with an application that every time they released a new version of their application, they had like a ton and like a lot of servers that were constantly like jumping in and out. What they ended up doing was building an AMI that had the instances, the apps already like pre-pulled in the AMI, and then they used that AMI for their worker pool AMI node in there. So basically, they just use Packer to build an AMI based on the default like AWS EKS AMI, and then ran like Docker pull on all the images that they needed, and then basically re-imaged it and made that the AMI that was used for their stuff. So
yeah, right now, yeah, we do some of that locally. We do that Docker pull as part of an AMI Packer build process. So we have like a internal use case for that. There's another tool I came across called Kubernetes Kubefledge, and I think you just shared it in the chat. I have not tried this out yet, but not too long ago, we ran into some issues where we're doing upgrades on RDS CD, and Quay was down for hours. I think it was their 2 to 3 day outage. And fortunately, Kubernetes will retry and eventually the image gets pulled, but it was not really an ideal time for us, especially when you're trying to roll out a bunch of clusters. And so this was a tool that was shared with me back then, and it would technically apply, I believe, to all images where it pulls it down and creates a local cache. I think, Eric, you mentioned this in a prior meeting, like Helm repos getting moved around, things like that. And there's like a way to cache those now. This is kind of like
there's another tool shared for that. I mean, I think this is good in addition to that. Just like security is a bunch of layers, availability and HA is the same, right? And there's no silver bullet. So I think having a local mirror, something like an Artifactory, this was another project that could mirror images into your own ECR. And then having something at the node level to handle transient failures like to the ECR or slowdowns as you're having. I think this makes a lot of sense. You know, caching in general is a trade-off. How do you say it articulately? It works well when you have time to fetch the reads so that when that subsequent request comes and it gets a cache hit. But in your case, you have fresh nodes. This isn't really going to help anything because it's going to have the same problem.
Yeah, I'd have to be careful about the node pools or keep this one around longer and then get the other ones warmed up. But then this one would eventually have to go out and fetch from the source and recache everything. And
or you could have your you could have your image storage on EFS potentially and mount that everywhere.
I haven't thought about that. Are you guys doing that in production at all? Like,
I just came up with the idea now, so no.
Appreciate it. We'll let you know if I throw it out.
We have tried it, and the issue comes down with locking. And I think we were not able to get it. Now, EFS is interesting. EFS is not your like granddaddy's NFS server, right? It's a lot more sophisticated. It supports POSIX style locks and all of that stuff. But there was still something that was missing, and I don't recall what. Throwing my vote into hat. I think this is one of those things where like the BitTorrent type protocol in your EKS cluster would be pretty awesome, because as more nodes are online, they're all just swarming and getting the data from each other.
I think there's a CNF project for something that is P2P like for Docker images. I forgot the name of it. I would pull up the landscape, but I don't think my browser can handle it right now. But I'll share a link as soon as I find it. There was something around the like P2P like. One of the thing when the Quay outage happened, I did dig into how the registries work, and so we were contemplating taking all the images we're dependent on and republishing them underneath their own public ECR. So this way we have ECR as a fallback for everything. And you can apparently do something with the API gateway, really any ingress tool that will let you reroute to the backend. You could use Docker Hub and then reroute to ECR and then reroute to Quay based on what's online, versus having to actually cache everything directly. So you do like some Nginx rewrite rules. It's a few clever tricks, and it apparently supports authentication. We never actually tried it or rolled it out, but it looked like a pretty good option to basically take advantage of all the free tier services and basically decide whichever one's online. You're using that one right now, and then switch between the others. And we're looking at synchronizing between all of them. But
it's like Nexus.
Yeah, but then we have to run Nexus, right?
And like something you have to run.
Yeah, I guess it's like API gateway, and you don't have to pay for storage. That was appealing.
But I heard Nginx thrown in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, sorry, not as a true reverse proxy, but more as a rewrite rule engine. It was purely based off. I'll send you the article I came across that broke down how the registry.
I mean, are you saying the concept of rewrites, but not actually Nginx?
Yes, the concept of rewrites. Sorry. Yeah.
Then I understand. Yeah, and you can do those transformations in API gateway. Yeah.
And supposedly. So I've not tried it end to end, but it sounded like a very cheap way to get out of running your own registry. Oh yeah, Dragonfly. I'm pretty sure that's it. I'm not familiar with Kraken, Oscar. Thanks for sharing.
What were we talking about? Docker.
Alibaba is the publisher of that.
All right.
Yeah, for their URL definitely looks like something you don't want to click on.
Stick around. I've got to drop, guys. Take care.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and Uber Kraken is the other one that's a very similar thing.
Oh, the P2P one.
Yeah.
Terabytes of data in seconds. Yeah, this sounds like exactly like what I was thinking would be a cool alternative. Now it'd be cool if this was combined with like a pull through. Because it uses a backend like S3 or GCS. Does it support pull through? No, doesn't seem like it. All right, well, we are at time, everyone. We didn't get to some other announcements. We'll bring those up next week, things that came up as well. But we got through most things. All right, well, we're going to be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse to subscribe and find all back catalog of our office hours. If you're interested in booking a session with me at Cloud Posse, seeing if we can help you at your business with cloud infrastructure, go to cloudposse.com/meet to book a session with me directly. And to get our newsletter, where we syndicate a lot of these cool links that we find every week, go to newsletter.cloudposse.com. Again, newsletter.cloudposse.com. We also have our podcast, podcast.cloudposse.com, which is a audio syndication of our office hours if you want to listen to it in the car. See you all next week, same time, same place. Go register at cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, cloudposse.com/office hours if you want to join live. Take care. See you next week.